This is From the Mezzanine, a podcast all about film and TV. We are Matt and Chuck, and we're about to bring you 90 plus minutes of pure film and TV commentary. Why should you continue watching? Because we have no ads, we aren't professionals who answer to a larger company, and we don't trade positive reviews for special access. Our own money is on the line, and that's why we're prepared to tell you what is the best and the worst in film and TV. Chuck?
And I keep on, I just reinforce, we spend our own money on this, Matt. AMC keeps making me pay like $15 to see a movie these days, but that's just the way it is. And it's always worth it. At least it has been, this has been a pretty good year, 2022. I haven't had any shitty experiences except for Moonfall, but I made the most of that. But we got, quite a bit of news up front on the show here today. Most of it related to the downfall of the streaming juggernaut that was Netflix. And Matt will give us his review of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I'm going to talk a little bit about WeCrashed and its companion piece over on Hulu, the documentary that's just about WeWork. And a little bit on Moon Knight, because apparently that show has made itself worth our time. And of course, we will be, the headline of the show, we're going to dig into the Northman, the latest from Robert Eggers, that psycho who, for some reason, just doesn't want to live in the modern day. So he makes these experiences for us. But it's kind of becoming a tradition from the Mezzanine. We're going to talk about our good friend Ezra Miller being a piece of shit, but we'll get right to that. You had a parting question for us at the end of the last show about movie critics. Why don't you run that by us again?
Yeah, so last week was pretty close to the 9th anniversary of the passing of Roger Ebert. And so I was kind of thinking about that, and I was thinking, is there such a thing as A-list movie critics anymore? Like the one person that, the larger populace goes to for their information. And if so, who is that person? And if there isn't, then why and who could that person be, maybe?
Yeah.
But what did you have to say?
And I don't really think there is. Like, the reason why we had Siskel and Ebert at all is because for, in the 90s and in the 80s when they got started, as the preeminent, movie critics who people actually knew what they looked like, and could check in with them on a weekly basis, was because they had a show on, PBS and then on ABC. So there was a way that everyone could see it, and it was the only thing that people were really going to. The internet kind of killed the A-list movie critic, because now there's just all of these enthusiast, outfits running around doing their thing, and everybody can kind of pick and choose who they want to hear from and, listen to. Because I guess that was my thought. Because, I can't think of anybody, maybe outside of, A.O. Scott, the New York Times film critic, who, who's relevant enough to even get their name in the blurb, in the movie trailer or on the poster. But what did you think?
Yeah, I pretty much thought the same thing. The first person that comes to mind, and it's only because of his proximity to Ebert, is Roper. Richard
That's
Roper.
True. Yeah.
And so, because he's still over at the Chicago Sun-Times, and he still maintains a website. But even him, his sort of him being out there in the public has kind of faded with the cancellation of the show that he was on with Ebert. But yeah, other than that, not really. Like you said, a lot of people just kind of go where they can pick and choose, and whoever's giving them the slant that they want to hear from and stuff like that. The only other person that comes to mind, and this is maybe for a different reason other than because people don't go to this guy for informational purposes or to see what they should see, but I thought of Armand White.
Fuck yeah, dude. I love Armond White. He's my boy, just because I know that he's going to be saying, like, he's going to have the ultimate contrarian take. So if it's a movie that the world loves, he's going to tell you why it sucks. If people don't like a movie or don't think a movie is as good as it could be, he's going to love it unreservedly. And, you know, and I get a kick out of that. He's a movie critic villain for like the internet era, because it doesn't matter who you're a fanboy of, you're going to hate him. That's why I enjoy him.
He's more infamous than famous, and
exactly.
I mean, people basically just go to him to be outraged, because I mean, the very fact that this guy actually gets like all of the bona fides of every other, you know, mainstream critic is absolutely crazy, because he even gets his spot on. I remember back in the day when Rotten Tomatoes was even bigger than it is now, or bigger deal. And he would consistently fuck up Rotten Tomatoes review like scores, like,
and that's why people hated it.
They hated him for it. He spoiled so many 100% ratings that it was so hilarious to watch. But yeah, I mean, he's the only other person that comes to mind, but only because of how like infamous he is. And but yeah, I don't even think that anybody has the makings to be Roger Ebert like anymore, because I don't think like our culture really allows for it anymore, as far as, you know, a person who could have that reachability to so many people in the general populace. It's just not something that's gonna happen anymore, I don't think. But
it kind of was happening over in, you know, the UK, and these are two guys that I used to, you know, watch quite a bit until they canceled their show back in March. But they had like basically a radio program with a live stream on the BBC, and that was Kermode and Mayo, Mark Kermode.
Okay.
And what I enjoyed about these guys is that, you know, Kermode is this pretentious fuck, and Mayo is this beleaguered, you know, tousle-haired, you know, radio host. And they often would have very different, you know, looks and experiences when it came to the movies themselves. And they would talk about everything. Like, they would force themselves to talk about what was the tops at the box office in the UK. That's kind of what they made themselves program to. It's like, okay, what are the folk watching over here? And then that would set the tone. And then Kermode would always be like, and here's this fucking weird DVD I bought over the weekend. And I really enjoyed these guys. And I feel like to the British, Kermode might have been like a Ebert-like figure. But yeah, he's moving on because he's got too expensive for the public funds at the British Broadcasting Company. So they're doing something else we don't know quite yet. But he was the only guy I could think of. But his reach is pretty limited to, like I said, the UK.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a good one, because I've definitely seen like bylines by them before, I think, and that is a really good one. But yeah, for the most part, I think it's kind of a age that's kind of past now, and especially, you know, when you think about his books that he came out with, his 1,000 movies you have to watch before you die and stuff like that. Like, there's nobody anybody would go to anymore that would, you know, be able to write a book like that and be so like definitive about it.
Exactly. And I guess like now we just have the Criterion Collection telling us what we should watch.
Yeah.
Or like and even better, we have like Martin Scorsese creating a like streaming platform so he can show you really old obscure shit that is true cinema.
Yeah, you know, that's about that.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. But we also have things like Letterboxd, and of course, you know, like the interactivity on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. So the hive mind arrives at its its curation these days instead of having a book. But I do miss having things like Roger Ebert's like I hated this movie, where it was just all of his like 1-star reviews. Those things were fun.
For sure.
For sure. And speaking of someone having fun, though, man, Ezra Miller. I forgive me if I've been getting his pronouns wrong this whole time, but he has just been at war with Hawaii. He got into another fucking assault situation. I don't know if he got arrested again, but it was worth writing about. And I don't know how Warner Brothers can rationalize hanging on to him at this point.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, it's sad and funny at the same time, but it's like, I mean, he obviously has some sort of problem that's probably related to drinking. And, but yeah, I mean, talk about like having the world in the palm of your hand and just like completely fucking it up, like so badly. And it's just weird. It's a weird situation because it's almost like if you live on the big island of Hawaii, you're on like Ezra Miller watch, basically.
It's like, okay, should we go out to the bars tonight? I don't know, honey. I think Ezra Miller's still in town.
Yeah.
Let's stay safe and just stay home.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, we continue to wish him the best. Maybe if his friends and family would get him out of Hawaii, like, or at least get him to a rehab center, on an island somewhere, that might be better. But he'll have to paddle his own canoe, I guess. And speaking of that, Netflix has been, doing it their way for a long time now, and they just had a really bad quarter, which resulted in Reed Hastings having to explain himself to investors. And yeah, their stock tanked. They lost. It didn't seem like they lost a huge number of users, when you think about it. But when your expectation is every month you're going to gain a few million, and instead you're losing a few 100,000, it's a bad look. Especially when the marketplace continues to get larger, and other platforms, stick around, as beleaguered as some of them might be. But what was your takeaway from the sequence of events of these stories that have come out since the initial reporting?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, we kind of talked about it a little bit on our episode where we reviewed the streaming services, but Netflix they put out so much stuff, but so much of it is trash. And, it's like, I was trying to think about it, what's like the last thing that I watched on Netflix that I genuinely liked. And I had to go all the way back to December for Power of the Dog. Yeah. And so it's been 4 months, and I think they've had a really terrible 4 months of output. And I think people nowadays are a lot more comfortable with the idea of canceling services and then starting them up again when they feel like it warrants it, the content warrants it, because there's so many streaming service out there now that, you can't have them all. I mean, you could have them all, but it'd be so expensive, and people are getting more comfortable with the idea of canceling stuff during certain times of the year. And there's even an app out there now that you can get that'll actually like cancel stuff for you. Like, you can put all your subscriptions in one app, and then it'll cancel. It'll basically cancel the stuff you're not using. And so, I mean, with the advent of stuff like that, yeah, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be to just log into your account and say, I don't want this for 6 months, and then forget about it.
Yeah, because for the early days of streaming, people kind of had the same mentality with subscriptions like that, like they did with like a cell phone plan, where it's like, oh shit, I'm locked in, I can't break my contract. And that's not what this is. Like, they are at the mercy of you, not the other way around. Like, I walked away from Hulu for like almost 3 months, and then I was like, you know what, I'm back. I have a reason to return to this. And like, with Netflix costing me like $20 a month right now, I'm even wondering why I hang on to it, because it's mostly just there so I can fall asleep to Seinfeld at night, and I could just listen to something else, because like November was just dicking around with the remote this morning, and she accidentally turned on this show that has it's a Netflix original. It's a reality show, and it's just about these like tan idiots selling real estate on Sunset Avenue, and there's like fucking 4 or 5 seasons of this garbage. And I was just thinking to myself, who the fuck watches this? Does anyone really watch this? Like, Netflix is buying it. They're producing it. So I guess somebody must be. But, yeah.
Yeah, and then in addition to, you know, this happening, then they were very swift to act. And they were very, like, unceremonious about pretty much... gutting their animation division.
Yeah, it was pretty heartless.
Yeah, it's just gone pretty much. And, you know, included in that was a long gestating adaptation of the comic series Bone,
which is sad news.
Yeah, that sucks. And yeah, they're just so like I don't know, like unemotional about this type of stuff. I mean, I'm not saying they should be, but like Netflix is getting a reputation for being so like running off of like algorithms basically. And if your algorithm doesn't say that this series is going to give you a certain number of viewers next season, then boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
And
that article was pretty revealing because it just kind of, it alleged that Netflix wasn't even really being honest about what their numbers and algorithms were telling them. Yeah, I didn't quite understand that, but there was this weird dichotomy between statements from the company where they claimed to want to be the home for the shows that everybody wants, or like the things that people want to see, but then to also like, I don't know, like be at the forefront of just like making anything possible, which is what lured a lot of these animators to come to Netflix in the first place, because, no one else is going to give me all the money in the world to do exactly what I want to do. But now Netflix is kind of subtly saying, well, actually, just letting people do whatever they want to do doesn't make us money. Yeah. So we're not going to do that anymore. Like, they're not going to be the vanguard, you know, of content like they kind of were selling themselves as to Hollywood at any rate. And it's I'm sad to hear like things about like Bone going by the wayside, and The Twits was a book that I loved as a kid because it's just about these 2 awful, you know, old people in England, and then all the animals that live nearby them just gang up on them and do terrible things to them. So you can have fun with that as an animation project. But instead what they seem to favor were the numbers that Boss Baby was getting, which I guess is very telling.
Yeah, they really need like there needs to be some degree of like curation at Netflix, kind of like how HBO does it, and it has to be human curation too. It has to, you have to have somebody, you know, reading these pitches, reading these scripts and saying, okay, this will make a good show, and this will make a terrible show, or this will make a critically acclaimed show, but it won't necessarily be the biggest audience show. And you know, it seems like there's no curation there. They're just like throwing it's the shotgun approach, and they're just throwing stuff at the wall, and sometimes it sticks, and then sometimes they have to take it out back and shoot. So it's like or abort it, you know. Yeah, you know, it, like in the womb before it's even, you know, close to, you know, birth. But then some things they get, it sticks to that wall and you can't get it down, and then it just winds up costing them more than per episode than any show in history. This season of Stranger Things apparently is costing $30 million an episode, mostly due to the larger salaries demanded by the young cast. And I just question how worth it this is going to be when it all comes down to it. It's like, it's, I mean, I guess you just answered my first question. My first question was going to be, if you have a show like Game of Thrones, which in its final season demanded $10 million an episode,
and that was a big deal.
Yeah, and that was like a very VFX heavy show with a lot of a lot of props and a lot of doing like
cast of like thousands,
cast of thousands, locations, and how do you get to 30 million for a show like Stranger Things, which for the most part they have their fair share of VFX and special effects, but for the most part it's kids in houses like talking, or kids in 1980s buildings talking, and it's like
the last season took place in a mall. So I guess they found some mall that was empty and then retrofitted it and then had fun shooting a season of the show there. But yeah, like what is the cost coming from? Who fucking knows? Because or it's like, what is it? The Duffer Brothers? I assume they just have a massive cocaine habit. Yeah, I think that's got to be something like that. Because I don't know if this fact was true, but apparently, like on Seinfeld, Elaine's wardrobe budget was $2 million for a season, and instead the wardrobe lady just went to like Goodwill and found the outfits there. So there just might be like, oh, we need this money desperately, and then they're just actually spending the least amount of money possible just so they could keep as much of it.
Oh yeah, it's the Adam Sandler approach.
Exactly. Yeah.
What he's doing, laundering money and then taking his friends on vacations.
But with Stranger Things, is it possible that they're just looking for the most expensive music? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it could be the music, I'm sure, and then like licensing, maybe like
all the products.
If you want to show like a action figure of Darth Vader on the screen, that's going to cost you a couple mil.
Just Disney needs its money now.
Yeah,
it's not Georgie Boy anymore.
But yeah, this is nuts. And this was kind of like the cherry on top of all this news that came out, because it was like over here you have all this like this terrible like woe is me, like, oh, we're dying, and then over on the other side you have, but we're spending $30 million an episode. So it's like it's just like just shape up, just shut up about your money issues. You're doing fine,
They must be, or the algorithm must be telling the decision makers at Netflix, like, give all the money to Stranger Things, cancel everything. But keep feeding the beast here, because the numbers must be insane, or at least like the merchandising for it must be good. I don't know. It's just hard to say. But that does bring up the upheaval. At any rate, brings up the question of whether a takeover is imminent of Netflix if their stock continues to dip, and the potential buyers are very. Like, I don't know. I would find it surprising if, like, Apple or Disney bought Netflix, because for a little bit there, it seemed like Disney was gonna just Borg Netflix back when they had a partnership, but instead they broke off and they're doing fine on their own. But like, who do you see as the potential, daddy for Netflix if this continues to go poorly?
God, I don't know. I mean, you kind of said it. As far as the people or the companies that could actually afford them. And other than that, I think worst case scenario would be like Tencent or like or like Alibaba coming in, which is like the Chinese version of Amazon. Yeah. So I think that would be like the absolute worst, because they could definitely afford it. So.
And that would be a huge, like that's a global marketplace right there. Yeah. Just that Tencent would be taken over. God, I hadn't even considered them. So yeah, that is worst case scenario. But we'll just have to wait and see. It's going to be an interesting quarter. We're going to have to start watching, the stock dips. Moving on, though, we have some sad news to share. Our boy Robert Morse, Bertram Cooper of Mad Men, passed away at the age of 90. And for some reason I thought he had already died, but maybe that's just because his character died, and that's what this image is from. Spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't done themselves a favor and watched Mad Men yet. But he was always just a magical little presence on that show. He always killed it with his little screen time that he had. So I just wanted to ask you, what was your favorite Bert Cooper moment?
I think it has to be there's a moment early in the show when Harry, they're having a baby shower for Harry's character, and Bert Cooper like walks in the room and he just goes, I just wanted to say happy birthday, and then he leaves. So it's because he has no idea what's going on, and it's seriously like the best moment. It's the funniest moment in the entire show, like by far. And that's probably my favorite because he's so aloof all the time, and he's so like into his own like stuff, his weird like Japanese tentacle porn.
Not wearing socks. Not wearing shoes. That's what it was. Not wearing shoes. Everybody had to take their shoes off in his office. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a good one. I had forgotten about that moment because I don't like the image I have up there. Like I just remember that the most fondly because it's a weird little dream sequence where Don Draper just watches him sing. Was it like the best things in life are free, and then go into his office and then just like wave goodbye as the door shuts on its own. So that's the first thing I thought of when I had heard the news. So long, sir.
I mean, that's definitely his most famous scene. And the thing I remember about that scene was because this is by the point where I was actually watching Mad Men like week to week on TV. Yeah. Because I believe this was season 7. And what they did with that season is they split it up into 2 parts. And they put about 4 months between them. And so I remember this scene was the last scene of that first chunk of episodes. That's the very last scene. So I remember I was sitting in my apartment watching it, and then this scene happened, and it ends on, Don Draper with tears in his eyes, and then it just cuts to black, and then that's the end of the first part of the season. And it was such a good TV moment. It was so well planned.
It definitely stands out in the golden age of your basic cable dramas. I kind of miss that time, and someday I'm gonna have to embark on a rewatch of that show, but God knows if I'm ever gonna have the time to do that. Yeah. But you were able to check out another film in the theater this week, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Mm-hmm. And this movie has long been on our radar. What was it like actually getting to see this thing?
Yeah, so for anybody that has been living under a rock, it's basically Nicolas Cage is playing himself, and he goes to the birthday party of a Spanish drug lord for a fee of $1 million because his career it's kind of waning.
Yeah, you got to pay the tax man. Still working on that.
And while he's there, he gets recruited by a couple of FBI agents to like spy on the drug lord, and his real life basically becomes one of his movies. And what I will say about this movie is it is not a good movie, but it is a very good vehicle for jokes. Yeah. And it's very funny, and it's at its best when it's kind of meandering, when it's just Pedro Pascal and Nicolas Cage driving through the Spanish countryside on LSD, and they wreak havoc on a small Spanish town, like a villa town, and they're just plowing through it like high off their mind. And that's when it's at its best, because it's at its funniest, and it has one thing on its mind, and it's the comedy. But then there are these moments in the movie where they kind of try and move the plot along, and it's such a flimsy plot, and it's just there to be there, basically, just to get the movie from point A to point Z. Yeah. And it's really bad. And Tiffany Haddish has a really thankless role of basically being like the exposition person, where she calls him up a number of times during the movie and says, like, basically moves the plot along and says, have you gotten this yet? Have you looked in his secret room yet? Stuff like that. And then the other kind of bad thing is there's a really terrible subplot with his like nearly estranged wife and daughter. where, they're, he's trying to mend his his not real life relationship with them. And his daughter is played by, I don't know if you know who she is, but Lily Mo Sheen, who is the daughter of Michael Sheen and Kate Beckinsale.
I don't know of her, but I'm not surprised that we have a nepotism case happening.
Yeah. And she's really, really bad. This is like one of her first acting roles, and she's pretty terrible. And but yeah, like I was saying, it is very funny though, and I think some of the best scenes in the film are when it gets really surreal. There's these 3 scenes in the film where Nicolas Cage pretends, or he imagines that he's talking to a younger version of himself, like a Wild at Heart era version of Nicolas Cage, and they even have it complete with like the terrible looking, like youthful CGI.
Oh god!
And it's really funny, and those are like probably the best scenes in the film because they're so weird. And there's one where he gets in a fist fight with himself that ends in him making out with himself. It's pretty funny, but yeah. Other than that, it's not a very good movie, and I would recommend seeing it in theaters if you are going to see it, because it was very, it was nice to be back in a movie theater for a comedy movie. Yes. Because these days there's so many comedy movies that are direct to streaming services. And they don't go to theaters often anymore. And this is the first one I can remember watching in a while. And it was kind of fun to be in a nearly sellout audience and just kind of like laughing with a bunch of strangers. So yeah, it was fun in that respect. Yeah.
I do know that Nick Cage said he'll never watch this movie, just because it was such a bizarre experience making it. And I think that's what built up the hype for me, that we were really in store for something transcendent here. Mm-hmm. But instead of this is just a joke delivery vehicle. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to see that myself. It was hard enough just to break away and go to the Northman last night. But this morning, as I was working on graphics, I was trying to catch up on Moon Knight, because you had said that some really awesome stuff was going down. I made it as far as episode 3, but I don't mind being spoiled. What is drawing you into this show? What's working for you?
Yeah, so I don't need to spend a huge amount of time on this, but I just wanted to mention this mostly to get it on the record, because episodes 2 and 3 were kind of meh, and episode 4 is interesting because the first 2/3 of the episode are kind of like a action adventure explorer movie, similar to like The Mummy, like the Brendan Fraser Mummies.
And I was gonna it was already getting there. Like we have a Rick Dalton and Evie dynamic happening with some of the characters already, and I was already kind of noticing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this episode goes like full blown like tomb raiding, and they're in like one of the pyramids, and they're kind of exploring it, and then it does something in the last third of the episode which puts the show on a path that is more akin to the comic book.
Okay.
And it kind of flips the entire show on its head, and it makes you wonder if anything previous to now has actually happened. Oh. And people who are familiar with Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson, who directed this past episode, will be very familiar with kind of the feel of one of their movies, and that kind of gives you a good idea of what happens. And I really, really hope that they make good on this, and it's not just a like red herring, or it's not just a, oh, never mind, it was all actually happening, and we have to finish up our, typical MCU story now. Like, fuck all that stuff that just happened at the end of that episode type of thing, So
yeah, I did see an image of like a giant hippopotamus person. So I can only hope it continues in that vein. Because I was hoping to have gotten that far so I could actually appreciate what you were talking about. because I kind of completely forgot about Moon Knight for the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, it hasn't been that good, and it's just kind of been whatever. And but if they make good on this is quite possibly one of the most interesting things that's happened in the entire MCU.
Hell yeah, fuck yeah.
So,
that's a lot of high praise there, just in that respect. But it is the MCU. We have to moderate our expectations. And speaking of moderating expectations, I've been watching a lot of content related to tech companies and IPOs and that kind of thing. And between WeCrashed and the Dropout, I just don't know why anybody would give anyone any money for anything ever again. I got the Apple TV subscription, and after I watched Severance, I was just like, well, what am I going to watch now? And of course, Jared Leto acting his fucking weirdo heart out, I'll watch that. But I hated every single second that I had to spend with this show. But I mostly just watched it out of completeness' sake. I just wanted to see what they would do with it. And the one thing they nailed is just how big a douchebags all these people are in real life. But in some ways, they almost didn't go far enough in exploring just how awful these people are. Anne Hathaway does a great job of being one of the most vile characters I think she's ever had in her whole repertoire. But it's very by the numbers. It almost doesn't go hard enough in showing just how debauched and pointless this whole company was. Like there's one character in particular he works for like some investment firm, and it's his job to be like, okay, but when are they gonna fucking make money? And no one ever listens to him. All the way, and then at the very end, when it's all said and done, he is given the keys to the kingdom. He's given control and power over the whole company, and he's like, finally, the adults are in charge. Cut to 2 hours later, we are fucked. It's like he can't even fix this thing. So it was funny at times, but it is just a big giant reminder of just how pointless it is to just dump money into concepts as nebulous as we're going to change the world. That should never be like the selling point. It's like what are you actually selling here? Because all that WeWork was a party. It was a club that you paid to be in. And as soon as you paid to be in it, the expectation was it owned you to a degree. And the Hulu documentary explored that a little bit more, because they actually sat down with some of the people who were tenants of WeWork, not employees, just like they rented office space or they lived in like a shared communal apartment setting, a dorm, a dorm for adults. And your time was controlled by the community. If you rented from them, you had to go to WeWork summer camp, where you would have to go to these stupid seminars that he and his wife would lead. You'd have to do yoga and drink kale shakes. And then at night, you'd all do Molly and get drunk on tequila. And the only like scene from WeCrashed that truly resonated with me, though, or like kind of they should have spent more time with this, was this scene where all of these like rank and file employees, like the IT kid who'd been with them the whole time, they all were paid with stock instead of with like actual money. So they've been living off of like $2,000 a month in Manhattan for like years, which is an impossible thing to do. And so they're just like clowning around. They were just supposed to go over to the Newman's apartment to just grab something, but instead they break into his tequila stash of his like $3,000 a bottle tequila. They're all getting like destroyed on it, talking about what they're gonna do with it. This one girl gets goaded into buying a Birkin bag, that she can't possibly afford. She's gonna have to pay in installments until the IPO happens. And then there's this zany little moment where Newman FaceTimes the IT kid, and they have to like put him against a wall so he doesn't realize that they're in his apartment. And they're just, if it had been more of that shit, it would have been way more watchable. But I can't really recommend it as an 8-hour long experience, because it's just scene after scene after scene of these people being awful and being mad that, oh, they don't get to my vision. It's just a lot of that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Whenever Jared Leto is in something, for the most part, I can't help it be like hyper aware of his acting at all times. Like, he's trying so hard.
Yeah.
And so does this show star Jared Leto, or does it star Jared Leto's performance? Like, can you like delineate between him playing the character and or is it just Jared Leto out there? You know,
I guess it's hard to say, because as I was watching him act, I was like, it felt like he was holding back. So yeah, it was distracting, because it was like, well, I expected more out of this guy, and instead it was just flat. And I guess there's a flatness to both of the leads' performances that keep this thing from being truly watchable. And yeah, he does his best to not look like Jared Leto and to not act like like he does it like in a Morbius interview, you know what I mean, where he's just talking about his movies when he's being himself, his pretentious ass self. But yeah, it was very obvious that like he was kind of phoning it in almost to a degree, and so that's where my disappointment comes from ultimately.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of weird. We're in sort of like this weird renewed age of television shows about like startups and Silicon Valley companies and stuff like that. I never mentioned it after the initial couple of episodes.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I did finish The Dropout on Hulu, and out of all of the shows like these ones that I've watched, I think that one's probably my favorite. It's the one that I actually like wanted to keep watching, because I dropped that show about Uber because that show sucked, and I haven't seen this one, but The Dropout actually was pretty compelling all the way through, and there was enough there artistically to keep the show interesting. It wasn't just like a beat for beat remake of the events that as they happened, you know.
No, like The Dropout feels a lot more to me like The Social Network, which is of course what a lot of these, this content is trying to be, but the Dropout is close. But yeah, WeCrashed was nowhere near as fun or interesting, but I have been enjoying The Dropout. I really like the guy playing Sonny. What's his name from Lost?
Yeah, God, what is his name? He
plays his name?
Saeed.
In
the show in Lost, but yeah, I can't remember. Oh, Naveen Andrews.
He is really good, because that was like, of all of the content about that story that I had consumed, Sonny is always this mysterious figure, and what their relationship exactly was mysterious, and who knows how real that whole fiction is, like in The Dropout. But that's what makes it compelling to me and to keep coming back to. But it has a lot of, I guess it's just a better show in general. It's better written, and like it's shot more interesting. This WeCrashed is just the same shit repeating over and over and over again until it stops, and we didn't need 8 fucking episodes to get there. Like, it had this really dumb like episode start one time where they made it look like a YouTube like tech guy talking about stock and explaining what an IPO was, but it was like Hollywood's souped up version of what a YouTuber looks like, and like they just did kind of dumb shit like that. So
okay,
miss WeCrashed.
Yeah. Have you gotten by chance to the episode of The Dropout with Connor from Succession yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, let me know when you get there, or you should talk about it when you get to that episode on here, because that is by far the best episode and the funniest, because it's Connor plays an executive for Walgreens.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Same with I just mentioned him. Harry from Mad Men. What's his name? Rich Summer.
Yes.
Yeah, Rich Summer. Rich Summer and him play executives for Walgreens, and they're only in like one episode, but it's really, really good. It's really funny.
Hell yeah. No, I'll definitely circle back to it when the time comes. Mm-hmm. But for now, we're going to transition to the movie of the hour, The Northman. Probably the manliest fucking movie that's ever been made. But holy shit, the whole package to this movie fucking rocked, and there wasn't much to it that I can't think of any complaints that I had or any qualms that I have in how much I loved this and recommend it. So I'll get my effusive praise out of the way. What were your thoughts coming out of the theater for this?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, it's a spectacle. It's a spectacle movie, and it's, it's epic. And, that word's overused, but it really, really truly is the case here. And just like a bloody, violent ode to like the Viking lifestyle. And you can tell there was so much thought put into it, into everything from the set dressing and the locations and the realisticness of everything, and just everything, like down to the smallest detail. And I think that I loved The Witch. I thought The Witch was great, like everyone else. And I am probably a bit more down on The Lighthouse than most people are. Mm-hmm. I didn't like it quite as much as most people seem to. Most film.
It's a hipster choice. Yeah. The Lighthouse. It's the hipster's choice.
I think he kind of swung a little too far in his sort of the weird direction. The like, I'm gonna make this weird thing that only I have a point of reference for. Type of thing. But I think with this movie, he kind of overcompensated in the exact opposite direction.
It's so straightforward as a movie goes.
It's very straightforward, surprisingly straightforward, but it works. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but I do think that he has the potential to be the next like big budget auteur guy that film studios have no problem giving 75 million, 100 million to. But yeah, what about you?
I have to agree with you on that. That's the thing. I didn't think that the straightforwardness was a problem. I kind of felt like that was baked in, because seeing as this was drawn like whole cloth from Viking myth, and from as best as in our modern vantage point can discern the Viking lifestyle to be, it feels like a historical document. Like we can send a video camera through time into the past, have it be invisible, and just hover around and do shit. That's kind of at certain sequences. That's what it feels like. But from the moment, like the prologue is pretty straightforward. It's good. It gets you into the the vibe well enough. But as soon as we advance to adult Amleth and we see the fucking berserker, raid on that Roos village, I saw a lady get up and leave the theater, but she came back. Like she was gone for like 20 minutes, and then she came back, and then she left again. Because she just could not handle how intense this movie would get.
Yeah, that was great, and I guess we'll get into spoilers now. But that whole sequence was so well shot. How it was kind of numerous long takes, and I'll even reference before that when the prologue first ends and it goes to adult Amleth, and one of my favorite shots of the movie is this shot, this long take where the camera starts in some bushes on a riverbank, and then it goes over the river, it catches up to the long ship, and then it goes through like the middle like lane of the ship between all the oarsmen, and it goes right up into a close-up on Alexander Sarsgaard's face. And I love shots like that where, you know, number one, you're wondering how they did that. Was this seemingly impossible shot done? And number two, the camera seems to occupy numerous spaces in its you know, where it is, that were previously occupied by other objects.
Yeah.
You know, like there was a person sitting in the place where the camera was or is now. Like 5 seconds before, there was somebody sitting there. Or how did the camera go through the wall of that building? And it's like, you know, just thinking about all of the stuff going on behind the scenes to move that shit out of the way and get everything ready. And oh, it's so good. Like just I
really want to see a behind the scenes of this production, just so they can showcase how exactly they shot a lot of this stuff for exactly those reasons. Cause it's magical. Cause you're just there. Like it takes, you are there, you know, cinematography to another level, while, you know, also I appreciated how few cuts and edits there were in this movie. Like, not even the elaborate camera takes where there's a lot of action going on. There's just long shots of people just sitting there staring at each other, you know, or just like looking at the sky or God knows what. It takes its time, from what that was, that New Yorker article, he and his cinematographer were just so deliberate in how they shot everything, you know, and even the cast, you know, talked about what it was like having to do something 60 times, you know, no matter what, like whether it was an elaborate berserker raid or, you know, just like whatever moment with Bjork. Bjork is barely in this movie, and she probably was on set for a month. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really funny that you mentioned that, because it's like there's so many people in this movie that are in the movie for literally one scene for like 30 seconds. Yeah. And you know it's because they just wanted to work with Robert Eggers. Like Willem Dafoe is barely in the movie.
I was so sad that he wasn't in it more. I wanted more of that fucking like jester character. I felt so cheated when he wasn't in it beyond his one scene.
Yeah, his scene, and then his head is in it for a little longer. But like him and and like you said, Bjork and Ralph Ineson, and
just showed up as a Russian pirate.
Yeah, and Kate Dickie is in this movie.
I didn't even catch her.
Yeah, she's like mostly in the background for her, because she plays like the I think like a helper to the witch in the Icelandic village that the brother owns. And then the fucking mountain from Game of Thrones is in one scene when he.
That's who that was. Okay.
Yeah. In the weird like game, the sporting event.
Yeah, I forget. I looked up the name of it, but it was a precursor to hurling, you know, which is an Irish standard. Yeah, sure. God, yeah, that whole. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, but as far as the storytelling goes, it uses chapters. It has those awesome runes, you know, to introduce the different segments of the story. But it's very clearly just it's the myth, without any additions, without any nonsense. There's just no like wasted space in this thing. You can tell that, oh yeah, this is the prologue section of the story. Okay, and then this is the part where he gets his sword, you know, and he converses with a he-witch to find it, and he kills a spirit. Like, it made so many, like mythic things literal that it shocked me. But by the time we got, you know, they teased us with the Valkyrie, you know, that his dream of flying to Valhalla, I was just like, okay, that's what this fucking thing is. Kind of like with the witch, you know, it's what if this you know, specter that these Puritans believed in so much, what if it was truly as they believed it to be? And that's what I really appreciated about the Northman here was how the whole thing was constructed with that in mind. It's as everything is as the Viking, you know, thought his world was. And like with no modern bullshit applied to it, and with nothing spackled over. Like every awful thing that they did to each other, just as a matter of course, it was on display, and he didn't look away from it. Like during the initial Berserker raid, there's this woman who's getting drug away, by a Berserker, and her son is like holding on to her, and then a guy just grabs his kid and just throws him into a hut with all the other little boys, and they just burn it down, all in one shot, and you're just stuck having to there's no hiding from any of the badness that happens.
Yeah, that was I think a direct reference to. Have you ever seen Come and See?
I have, yes.
Yeah, very, very direct homage to that. I think in that movie, there's a scene where the exact same thing happens, but with Russian soldiers, I believe, and it even does the same shot where it focuses on his face with the building burning in the background. So, yeah.
I think that's actually the most famous image from it, is it not? Or is that just that? Yeah.
Yeah, because his face is the child actor who was in that. It was like pretty much literally abused, and like he looked like he had aged like 10 years over the course of making that movie. But yeah, that was, I think, very, very much a homage to that, and that was cool. And yeah, I mean, that whole sequence was incredible, like the catching the spear and throwing it back.
Yeah.
The sort of howling like wolves, and they all had like wolf skins on.
Oh yeah, that whole ritual, getting them amped up the night before. It's like, you guys are all wolf men.
Yeah.
But early, before the movie had come out, like the test screenings from people, made comments like, you have to have a degree in Viking history to understand this. Yeah. So do you think they got rid of, like, they ADR'd like authentic, the Viking language out and ADR'd in English language? Because there was a few moments, especially with like Willem Dafoe's scene, where it appeared to me like, oh, that sounds a little off. Like, you don't see the mouth, so you don't know what he's actually saying. So I kind of got the sense that they did like anglify this for us English speakers over here.
Yeah, you're right on with that. There was a article that I was reading last night that's exactly what they did. Is they had to go and ADR some of like the weird turn of phrases that we don't understand as English speakers, or some of the stranger like metaphor and stuff like that they use that would kind of go way over our heads. And yeah, I can't remember where the article was on, but yeah, they did write about that. And and they talked about that, him and Sion, the guy who co-wrote it. They talked about that. And but yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, you make a good point bringing that up, the fact that there was all these people at the test screenings who, said all this stuff about like not understanding it. And I don't see, I mean, who knows what exactly they took out of the movie, but from this cut of the movie that we got, I don't see what they're talking about. Like, I don't
either.
I don't understand what they were talking about, because even the stuff that wasn't like explained directly, I still understood. Like the whole thing about him not being able to unsheath the sword and, stuff like that. You kind of just get it, because even if it's not exactly explained, and I didn't have a problem with that.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to just how straightforward and simple this story really is. Like, how many different times have we seen a revenge story? How many times have we, seen it with like these kinds of trappings? Maybe not specifically this, but we know the beats of this story. It's ingrained into the human unconscious at this point. So I don't know. Yeah, like, I did not need anyone holding my hand to understand what was on screen, because it's there. Like, the formalism of this movie makes it so a lot of the storytelling is just visual anyway. And it's just an action more specifically. I was kind of, even reminded of like Mad Max Fury Road a few times, because like in that movie, so talk about a movie that did not like go out of its way to explain any of, like, you needed a fucking Bible, like a movie Bible for that movie to understand what half the shit those people were saying, but you could still roll with it. All of the hokey, stuff that Robert Eggers likes, like about language and how it changes over time. I can understand why they made him lift that out, but it does beg the question: do we deserve an Eggers cut? Do we deserve a version of this movie that is exactly how he wanted it to be, or is it actually something better for it to be as good as it is in spite of what the studio needed from him?
I mean, I don't think one is necessary. I think this is like a pretty good version of the movie. I don't know, I wouldn't want to play with fire in that way, because what if the Eggers cut is released and then it's worse than this version?
Then you have the Ridley Scott problem.
Yeah, and it's like, for the most part, the stuff that I could see, I was watching the movie specifically kind of in the back of my mind, looking for the stuff that I think the studio made him put in. Yeah. And the only thing I could really think of is with how romantic the relationship between him and Anya Taylor-Joy's relationship gets, where he plays, Alexander Skarsgård plays a savage, and it seems, especially with the latter scenes with her, it seems very like out of place romantic, where they're like sitting in the moonlight in that forest naked together, and then they're
in a hot spring, having sexy times.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the only thing that I could maybe see, because I could totally see like some studio exec somewhere being like, you need to set up stakes for this final battle. There is no stakes for it. He's just and then they make him like create a more loving relationship with her. And maybe even the kid thing, I don't know.
That's well, I want to hope that the whole kid thing was there because it's part of the myth story, because on the Wikipedia thing for this, what his daughter in like that like future thing he sees when he sees the tree Ysgradil, like she's called the Maiden King, so she's another figure from Icelandic folklore apparently. And but I do think that softening and romanticizing their relationship, that makes sense, because the only other like love story that we seemingly have in all of this is Gudrun, his mother, and his father, but she just shits on all of that because she's just like, well, no, I was taken as a slave too, like I wanted him to die so fucking bad, and that's of course a curveball narratively, but it kind of, when you think about how this inspired Hamlet, it kind of makes sense, because we're being shown the brutality of this culture and just how disposable life and women are. So there kind of did seem like a little bit of a feminist thing to be like, oh no, all the witchy women he encounters in his life are the ones who are actually helping them, and they have agency. And I think they wanted to give Anya Taylor-Joy some agency there, and not have her be just like a spoil of war for him. I think that maybe that was part of it.
I could see that. Yeah. I didn't have a problem with her. I thought she was really good, and I loved her, a lot of her scenes with her like earth magic, and when she rubs like the period blood on Klaus Bang's face, and that was pretty good. But I'm just kind of curious, you brought up Nicole Kidman's character. Was there any sort of reaction in your theater when she kissed him, when she kissed her son?
I was sitting between two couples. You know, like there's, you know, it's those awesome recliner seats, and I could feel the like reaction from both of the couples next to me. They were grossed out, and they were grossed out at everything. Like every single time someone got a sword stabbed through their fucking like, you know, nose hole or something.
Oh yeah.
Like they talked, they were on their phones. I did my best to just silo myself off and enjoy the movie. They made it difficult though, but I enjoy when people can't handle movies that like I'm loving, because like she's just a fucked up lady, and you know what, that's fine. It's like, it's not like we actually had to watch them have sex, you know. Like everybody still watches Empire Strike Back just fine.
Yeah, it was just, I only bring it up because in the theater that I was in, there was like an audible like, like...
And that's funny because based on all statistics, if there's a porn that unites this great nation of ours, it's incest porn. As disturbing as that is, but it's true. So you'd think that people would have been into it, but I think we're just protesting, you know. We have to act like it grosses us out. But now they're all going home and writing, you know, Northman incest fan fiction.
So I guess I'm trying to think of where I was going to go next, but I guess
just
the
very
surreal.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, I was just going to bring up like the surreal elements of the film, because for the most part, I mean, we talked about it at the beginning, where this is a pretty conventional movie, and it seems like the surreal elements kind of live at the fringes, and they're kind of occupied. They're kind of destined for his hallucinations, or what's he seen in his mind's eye sort of thing. And what did you make of all that stuff? Like, I mean, there's the Valkyrie, there's the witch, there's the undead guy that he fights, there's the vision of Odin he sees when the ravens come
they pick him free. So it's like Odin wants him to succeed, you know, the gods favor him. And you have to wonder how much of that is real, you know, in the scheme of things. How much of it is just what he wants, you know, to be, you know, it's real enough just for the sake of his quest, you know. But from where I was sitting, it was just, oh no, it's kind of like in The Witch, you know, like the is Black Phillip just a goat, or was he Satan the whole time? You know, so I kind of just approached it with, like, I guess, a magical realism perspective, and it's like, no, like, this is what their world is. It's unforgiving and brutal and harsh, and there's very seemingly little intervention from a supernatural source unless you conjure it up on your own, and it's all ceremonial chaos magic. So if you do the work inside your own head and you manifest it in reality. And for some reason he was, you know, pushed, you know, towards, you know, those movies all about fate, and it was a fate, you know, that he was given literally as a little boy by his dad, and then it was, you know, thrust upon him into, you know, adulthood, and he had to finally, you know, return home and, you know, realize it, you know, we kind of, like, did you pay attention to, like, you know, props and, like, you know, the art design? Like, what was something that really stood out to you as, like, okay, that's not something that they just made up or even made themselves. That actually looks like the real thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. I was, you know, I loved all that stuff. Like, just the two things that jump out to me were those, like, awesome, like, sod houses that they lived on, like, on the farm, in Iceland, where the roofs are, like, covered in like foot tall grass, and they're just grass growing on them, and they're, like, built into, like, the hills, and it's so cool.
Little hobbit holes, basically.
Yeah. And then the other thing, oh man, I want to mention again Klaus Bang, because that guy has such a presence, like, his, especially in the prologue scenes, like, he's such, like, a like, formidable actor. Like, he's very he's almost scary, and I watched him a couple years ago in the BBC version of Dracula that they did.
Okay, because I'm not too familiar with him.
Yeah, I mostly know him from The Square. He was in The Square.
That's right. Okay,
as like the museum art director, and then
I didn't recognize him at all.
Yeah, he's very much. This is like one of the first period things he's done, because he's very much in a lot of like French movies. Other than this, and and like I said, he was in the BBC's Dracula that was done by the Sherlock guys, Mark Gatiss and Stephen Fry, or no, not Stephen Fry, Stephen. Maybe it is
Merchant.
Stephen Fry, but
was it Merchant? Was that his name?
It could be, but
not Merchant. That's the Office guy. God damn it.
I think it might be Stephen Fry, but I know it's Stephen something. But anyways, he played Dracula in that show. And oh man, he was so good as Count Dracula. But
Moffat, Stephen Moffat,
yeah,
Doctor Who guy.
Yeah, and the thing I was going to circle around back to about him was his armor in that opening prologue was so cool. Like the furs with like the chainmail and then the plate helmet when he walked up to Ethan Hawke's character, like on the ground. And that was so like well designed and just like a very unique look. But what about you?
Well, I guess the thing that had caught my eye before the movie, and like when I actually got to see it up close in the movie itself, from the ad campaign to like actually getting to see it, like Bjork's whole situation was so fucking weird. But like that was all just wheat. Like her headdress is just wheat, and I just thought that was on point, because we're literally just talking about cultures that are barely existing on the fringes of humanity at that point in human history.
Yeah, and her look was awesome, and like the gouged out eyes.
Yeah, and those little stones that were there in place of it. Mm-hmm. There was a lot going on. I kind of felt bad for Anna Taylor-Joy that she didn't get to do anything more fun than what she got to do, because she just wore dresses and was meek until she started casting spells and shit.
Yeah, she's like the only, like this movie is so like dirty and like grimy and everything looks gross and disgusting. But then Anya Taylor-Joy looks fine. She's like clean and like attractive.
And everyone's teeth is really beautiful too. I was a little shocked that he didn't have something going on there to make everyone look more authentic in that respect. But probably a note from the studio: we can't have the pretty people looking gross.
Yeah, we can have our main character with rotten teeth.
But a special. I just want to ask you, just what did you think of the last showdown, the boss battle of this fucking story, taking place like it was like attack. Was it Revenge of the Sith? Like on a like surrounded by magma. It shocked me. I didn't think it was going to go in that direction. I thought it was all going to settle out with his little one-man raid, but it just kept on evolving.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, it's just a cool setting for like a sort of final showdown. And, they had like the ash all over them. Like there was little flecks of ash everywhere, like all over their bodies. And, I think they were completely nude too, weren't they? They
might have been, yeah. Yeah, because
I think they were.
They just had shields and swords.
Yeah. And that was, it was cool. I mean, it was, I like how it ended too, where he just like cut the head off and the head just immediately rolls off his back.
And he just gets stabbed in the heart all in the same moment, so it's over, it's done with, but everything is destroyed. But then he got to go to Valhalla, so who gives a shit, Yeah. And I guess that brings us to, kind of wrap things up a little bit, but what do you, like, he obviously, Robert Eggers, he's got the ability, and he's proven with this movie that even with his own sensibilities, he can work somewhat within the studio system and deliver something that I would say is actually more commercial than it isn't. Do you think, like, was there any aspect of his essence that was, that you felt was missing, or could have been ramped up more? And I guess moving forward with his career, do you want him to continue to make movies like this, or should he go back to his weird little projects like The Witch and the Lighthouse?
Yeah, I think there's enough here. There's enough unique about this movie that I think there's not a whole lot of him that's lost. And I kind of made a comparison to, like, way back. I mentioned this in my review too, when we talked about the trailer the first time, about how I think he was going to kind of become like the next Ridley Scott. And I don't think the comparison's quite there, in that Ridley Scott is definitely more conventional than he is. I think there is a little bit more of an artistic approach to how Robert Eggers makes his movies. But I do stand by the fact that I do think he is going to become a bigger deal than he is. He's gonna branch out. He's going to go to different genres, and he's going to make larger movies than he has made, because I think this is going to be a success, because my theater was sold out, and I think the word of mouth is good on this movie. The reviews are good. I think this is going to be a pretty big success, and it's really going to bode well for him. I think he has a very bright future, and he can do whatever he wants. And I think he's making smart moves too, because he, in the last week or so, as he's been doing the press tour for this, he has explicitly stated that he's not going to do his Nosferatu remake. And I think that's a good move, because he's not siloing himself to the horror genre, and he's going to go and do other stuff. And I fully support that,
Absolutely. Cause somebody like Ari Aster is now the horror guy. Mm-hmm. And, and some other people like, the guy that did It Follows, he quite hasn't been able to find himself outside of it. David
Robert Mitchell.
Robert Mitchell. Yeah. If people have seen Under the Silver Lake, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Not that movie's bad, but if you thought you were going to be getting It Follows, you were going to be sorely disappointed. Yeah. But with Robert Eggers, though, he during his rounds, he also explicitly told GQ that he would never make a film in the modern day. He's like, I'm not interested in the present. I don't care about the world we live in. I care about the past, because that's just the goofy guy he is, I guess. So
yeah, I mean that tracks. That definitely tracks. His sort of obsession with history it's on display in all of his movies. So absolutely.
And I guess if there was something to appreciate about The Lighthouse, it was how it embraced old school film techniques too. And I think that's mostly what The Circle Jerk is about as far as that movie goes. But what we can't really predict what this guy's going to be doing next, but if you could put something in front of him to like catch his interest, like what would you want him to make as a movie next?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think he should continue going big, I think. And I'm all for another historical movie. I think he's right about the modern thing. I don't think his sensibilities really fit with a modern movie.
No.
And so, yeah, another historical epic he could do. Just make sure to set it in a completely different time period, and just make sure the story isn't too similar to this,
Yeah.
And I think he'd be fine. But yeah, otherwise, God, I have no idea. What about, have you thought of anything?
Well, and this is something he would never do, is the problem, because but I was just reminded, like, as I was watching The Northman, all I could think to myself was, I want this guy to do The Black Company so fucking bad. Because he would just get it right, because it's the grime, and it's the farting and the grossness of it all, and the drudgery of the brutality that he just nails. And So that's what I was thinking, but he's that is not something he would do, because it's fake. It's not real. He can't like look at some like wood prints in an old book to derive inspiration. So he's probably not too keen on paperback fantasy novels. Mm-hmm. But if there was something from like, I don't know, it's there's just so much in human history, and he seems to be an Anglophile, but like how much more can he dip into without getting redundant? And so I trust him to just kind of he knows what he wants to do, and I am here for it, whatever it is.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and I guess just to kind of close out here, I mean, obviously, I think our conversation has spoken for itself. We would both recommend it, and the one thing I will say is this movie shares a lot of DNA with David Lowery's The Green Knight, mm-hmm. like a ton, like as far as the historical epic and the like magical realism / surrealism, and the I mean, even like you were saying before with the scene where it shows Yggdrasil and the daughter who's the queen, that exact same scene happens in The Green Knight with
true.
The daughter. Yeah. And so I guess what I would say to people is, if you liked that movie, which I loved, you're probably, it's a pretty safe bet that you're gonna like this movie. They share a lot of DNA, and they are very similar, I think. More than you would think. It's not just it's not just a superficial comparison.
Because they both are, these really stylized, reimaginings of classic tales. And while David Lowery's, I feel like, fits more with the postmodern sensibility, Eggers is very much he's more of a realist in that sense. But they are very kindred films, and there's a lot that both fans of both could get out of the other. Mm-hmm. So go see The Northman. Make sure that this doesn't end his career, because COVID made this movie cost $90 million for some reason. But just we can at least trust him to not be swayed by Hollywood money and become the next director of like Thor because he made this movie.
Yeah. God, that would be so terrible.
I would cry. I would weep. But coming out next week, we have a lot of shit coming out this next week, but we're just going to highlight a few things. Mm-hmm. David Simon is back. Pelicanos is back. We have Baltimore, crime, cops. It's all here. James Badge Dale, John Berthnall. They're all doing it, man. And it's about something that's real, which is like the gun task force in Baltimore, the corruption that they had. But apparently, from what David Simon has said, the whole point of this series is all cops are bastards. So we're not going to have a McNulty. There's no one that we're going to feel good about, and want to follow. But, I guess it's time. We're back on the streets. We're back in Bodymore Murderland yet again.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to this. I think it premieres on Monday night. And
oh my God, that's Herc.
Yeah, Herc's in it. Marlowe's in it too. Marlowe plays like a DA in it. It's weird, but it looks great. And the reviews, the first couple reviews for this just started popping up online yesterday, and it's getting pretty stellar word of mouth right now. So
and that was Jay Lantzman. Jay Lantzman. He's lost so much fucking weight. Good for him.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And what else is there? Let's just breeze through a few before we highlight the next one. We got
so
Barry's back, season 3.
Yep. Very, very long awaited. I mean, it's been 3 years since season 2, I think.
Holy shit. Because that's because I just kind of realized I hadn't thought about Barry in a very long time. And that's why. Because they were taking their time with this third season of it.
Yeah, and then we've got, I'll just kind of run through the ones we're not going to talk about too much, but Made for Love Season 2 on HBO. That was a pretty good show. I'd recommend it to the first season to anyone who likes sort of good comedy shows. Shining Girls on Apple TV Plus, season 2 of Undone on Prime Video. That's the rotoscope show.
Yeah, God, yeah, I forgot about that one. That was wild and fun, though. I didn't realize it was getting a follow-up.
Yeah, so that's unexpected. And then we have The Offer, the movie or the series about the making of The Godfather.
The lesser of them. I read the Blacklist screenplay for the one that's going to be starring Jake Gyllenhaal and the guy from Moon Knight. I'm blanking on his name here.
Oscar Isaac?
Oscar Isaac, yeah.
Okay.
Oscar, I forget who he's playing in it, but that script was a lot of fun. And literally the framework of that script was the script for The Godfather itself. So it's like there's I don't know. It was just a lot more fun than how lame The Offer looks.
Yeah, it does. And then The Man Who Fell to Earth remake, a series remake of the David Bowie movie, I believe, and then Gaslit, which is sort of a revisionist history look at the Watergate scandal, I believe.
Yeah, and I should have brought this up when we were talking about WeCrashed, but it's another Wondery podcast adaptation. Have you listened to any of their stuff? They're really produced, and they're just really.
Is it narrative?
Yeah,
or is it
kind of? Yeah, like they're kind of narrative podcasts. Like Dirty John was a Wondery podcast, but they're all based on a true story. And there's interviews, but then there's also at times performance built into it. So that it's kind of out there, but they're really successful, and Hollywood loves making movies and shows based on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Have you listened to any of those?
I listened to which one was that? I listened to Dirty John, and then there was a second one that I listened to. I think they even did the Pam, the What About Pam, that Renee Zellweger one.
Oh, yeah, the NBC show?
The NBC show, yeah, which is hysterical. That was a Wondery podcast as well.
Okay.
And so, I don't know. It was when I was at work and I got tired of Last Podcast on the Left. I needed something different. And I went back to The Boys because I just wanted the zaniness, less than I wanted, NPR sensibilities.
But and then the last one, the other one that we kind of wanted to highlight a little bit. What strikes you about this one?
Well, Andrew Garfield, I'm a big fan of that guy. And this, I hope that this brings back like his kind of vibe from the Red Riding trilogy, which was like early on in his career. But I'm just a big sucker for true crime stories, and this one in particular is a fucking crazy one if you're unfamiliar for it. But the book that this is based on is excellent, and it's just I just have hopes that this is going to be a gnarly watch, because it's not for the faint of heart when it gets down to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this, and I know that this is the first movie that Dustin Lance Black has written since J. Edgar Hoover, what was that? J.
Edgar. What a thankless fucking movie that was.
Yeah. So, and I think he's pretty good. He's a pretty good writer. And then the other thing I saw about this that has me excited is there's a couple episodes directed by David Mackenzie, the Australian director.
Oh yeah.
David Mackenzie. So I'm looking forward to that. But this is going to be on FX. I don't know if we said the name, but it's called Under the Banner of Heaven.
Yeah.
And it should be on Hulu the next day, because the FX has that deal with Hulu. So,
which I appreciate, because they got good stuff. And I wanted to ask you, what trait, and this is mostly just a comment on the theater going experience, but all but one trailer last night was for something that was either a sequel, a remake, or like something like that. And on top of that, the pre-roll like movie quiz bullshit that they always have. Everything was just some non-question or non-trivia fact about some franchise. Like they had to complete this quote from Avatar, and it was the dumbest non-quote.
It's like, I see you.
Yeah, it wasn't even that. It was if it ain't raining, we ain't training. And I'm like, who remembers that line? Nobody. But we have to remind people that Avatar was a thing. 2009 was a long time ago. Yeah. But the one trailer that I got before the Northman that was for a distinct individual property was a Red Band trailer. What movie do you think it was for? Maybe it was the same for you.
No, it wasn't.
Because I don't think we've talked about it on here, so I might as well just throw it up because I'm excited for this. But it's the latest from Alex Garland, which is Men, which is a bizarre fucking looking movie where Rory Kinnear plays literally every male character in it.
Yeah. Yeah, this, I think we had mentioned this a little bit because I had mentioned this about how A24 markets all their movies like horror films, even when they're not.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is going to be a horror film, even though they're doing the same thing. But yeah, this looks fucking crazy.
It's like Alex Garland is a weird motherfucker. And this came to my mind because of Hulu and FX. Debs was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And that was his show. But this just looks out there, and I'm here for it. But we're not going to be seeing this movie for a while now. It released, I guess not too long, May 20th. So about a month away. Get hyped.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what's coming up. And you had a parting question for us this week related to whether, I guess just what the thoughts are on, whether the theater should be sacred from the, like if it's an R-rated film, do you bring a child? Do you bring a baby? Like, what made you ask that question?
Yeah, so this was coming from my experience yesterday seeing The Northman, where I literally walked in the theater down the aisle and immediately saw in the aisle somebody had left a stroller, and I was like, oh my god, are you serious? And so I turned the corner, and here's this man and this woman who have their tiny like probably 1-year-old child in the woman's arms. And sure enough, about probably 5 or 6 times throughout the movie, that child started freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
And the woman, I mean, she at the very least was kind enough to leave the theater each time, but it was still really annoying. So I want to know, what are your thoughts on children in R-rated movies, and should they be outlawed completely?
Yeah, like how did they get tickets? Like that's what blows my mind. Because I've never experienced a baby, but I have seen young children in movies they shouldn't be. And I'll have a lot to say about that next week.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. And then I guess we didn't talk about this beforehand, but as far as what we're doing next week.
That's an excellent question. What are we doing next week?
Well, we're going to be participating in the one thing every year that the film community comes together for, or a lot of the film community is.
This is our football season.
Yeah, this is exactly. Yeah. So there is a thing called the Summer Movie Wager that I'm sure anybody watching this is probably familiar with if you're nerdy enough to be watching us. And what it is a couple podcasts have popularized it. One of them is the Slash Filmcast, and then the other one is the Blank Check with Griffin and David, I want to say is what it's called. That's the podcast where they think of, the type of movie that they would like to make with a blank check in a certain genre. Have you ever heard of that one before?
I haven't. No, I'm gonna have to check that out.
It's pretty popular. But so what we're gonna do is we're gonna participate in this, and if people don't know what this is we're predicting the 10 highest grossing movies domestically of the summer of 2022. And so we have to get our picks in before Doctor Strange comes out, because that's the big kickoff to it. But yeah, so it's kind of a fantasy football type thing where, depending on how many you get right and your placement in the top 10, you earn points. And at the end of the summer, there will be a winner and a loser. And I think what we decided on was the stakes for this is going to be that whoever wins gets to choose one film for the loser to watch. So, whether they want to be nice about it and say, hey, you've never seen this movie, you need to see this, or they want to be mean about it and be like, I'm going to make you watch this trash piece of shit movie.
Oh God.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'll leave it this week. We'll explain more next week, but go to the summermoviewager.com if you've never been there.
I'll put it in the description. So
yeah,
I'll get a link.
You can participate. There's literally a poll on the website if you get your picks in, where they keep track of, they have a leaderboards out of the thousands of people that play it every summer. You can pinpoint where you're at in the leaderboards. So we'll be doing that also. And
so yeah, we'll kind of have to commit. Yeah, we're gonna have to make our picks and plug them in, and then we're just gonna have to sit back and just see what happens. So yeah, this is like March Madness more so, because it's like making bets about who's gonna do what. And it's just to throw some of these titles up there so people can get it in your mind space. Like there's Jurassic World Dominion, a lot of the movies that was showcased in those trailers I was bitching about.
Yeah.
But then there's also shit like Downton Abbey and Where the Crawdads Sing. That's a insane movie to be in the running on here, but sure enough, there it is. But yeah, that's the gist of it.
Yeah. So, and we'll go over it all again next week, and we'll get our picks in, and yeah, it should be fun going over those. And I'd encourage anyone to go over to the website and participate, because it is literally like thousands of people that do it every summer. And we haven't been able to do it for the past 2 summers.
That's
because
true.
there haven't been enough blockbusters to even be able to make a top 10. So,
and I feel like a lot of these movies have been held back specifically for that reason. It's like, if you can't do the summer movie wager, can you do, can you have a blockbuster? You need to, people want to have things to go see. And the lineup for the summer looks kind of weird compared to like what you would expect it to be. But we'll dig into that next week. I'm gonna have to noodle on this during my lunch hours. And because there's a lot of streaming happening next week, but not a lot in theaters. So we're just gonna look ahead to the future. Check out the Northman though, everyone. Please fucking go to that. If you're gonna go see a movie in theaters right now, go see that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you to Matt as always. And have a good night, everybody.
Yeah, see ya.